Welcome to the deep dive. Our goal today, simple, cut through the noise, give you a fast, clear synthesis of some really high-stakes global stories, the kind of understanding that leaves you informed quickly but also thoroughly.
Yeah, it's quite a mix today. We've got some real contrasts lined up. Everything from, a landmark election in Japan bumping up against deep-seated gender issues
Right.
to a very tricky political balancing act in the UK, and then the really tangled geopolitics driving conflict in places like Sudan.
Okay, so let's kick off right there at that frontier of political change, where old norms are really being tested by new developments,
Yeah.
starting in Japan.
Exactly, Japan. The big news. Sanai Takaichi elected as the country's first female prime minister back on October 21st. I mean, politically, that's a massive milestone.
Especially given Japan's record on gender equality rate, isn't it quite low?
Dismal, really. They ranked 118th out of 148 countries in the 2025 Global Gender Gap Index. So yeah, first female PM is significant context.
But hang on, there's a twist, isn't there? Takaichi herself, she's conservative and doesn't actually call herself a feminist.
That's the paradox. She's conservative, avoids the feminist label, and she's even defended the law requiring married couples to use the same family name.
And Japan is the only country with that law now.
The only one legally enforcing it. And it might sound like just bureaucracy, but for professional women, especially academics, researchers, it can be a career nightmare.
How so, practically speaking?
Well, imagine trying to maintain a consistent publication record, a professional identity, when your legal name changes if your marital status does. It makes tracking citations, building a reputation, incredibly difficult.
Wow, yeah. That sounds almost designed to hinder women in academia. Is the government doing anything about this naming headache, then?
Well, they're trying. The coalition agreement does promise to, and I quote, substantially expand science grants. And importantly, they're talking about a system to give legal effect to using maiden names alongside married names.
Okay, but does that really fix the root problem? If the legal identity is still tied to that family register system, isn't that just like a workaround?
That's exactly the question people are asking.
Yeah.
The family register, the koseki, it's fundamental to legal identity there. So just allowing the use of a maiden name doesn't solve all the underlying legal and practical snags.
And we see the impact in the data.
Clearly, female researchers in Japan get promoted on average 5 to 10 years later than male colleagues. And get this, that delay holds true even if they don't have children. Plus, many face job instability, stuck in fixed-term positions even at professor level.
A system of delays, regardless of merit.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift focus westward to another high-pressure situation, the UK Treasury. Chancellor Rachel Reeves facing, well, a potentially historic decision.
Yeah, the so-called 50-year tax taboo. The basic rate of income tax in the UK hasn't gone up since 1975. Labour's Dennis Healey did it then. It's politically extremely sensitive.
And her recent speech, the pre-budget one?
Yeah.
That felt like prepping the ground, didn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Classic softening up, or pitch rolling as they call it. Trying to get the public braced for, quote, unpopular choices to come. Using Downing Street for it shows how big a deal this is.
Because it flies right in the face of a major promise they made.
A huge one. Page 21 of their manifesto, explicit or promised. No increases to national insurance or the basic, higher, or additional rates of income tax or VAT. Breaking that.
Just quickly, for listeners maybe not familiar, national insurance is like a payroll tax for Social Security, and VAT is sales tax.
Exactly. So touching any of those, especially the basic income tax rate after that promise, it's seen as a massive breach of trust.
So why float the possibility now? If the economy news it, why the expectation management given that specific promise?
Well, she's likely testing the waters, seeing how much political backlash there might be. But economists are basically saying the government's, run out of other options to fix the public finances. The debt is just too high.
So they might try other things first, like allowances.
They might try to get creative, maybe tinker with tax allowances or thresholds to raise money without technically raising the rate. But the pressure is immense. Whatever she decides, it's likely going to define her career and Sir Keir Starmer's leadership, too.
Okay, from a potential crisis over government finances to one that already happened, the UK post office scandal.
Yeah.
A story of just incredible institutional failure and a long, long fight for justice.
It's just staggering, the human cost over decades. The official inquiry documented marriages collapsing, people suffering severe stress-related illnesses, addiction, and tragically, it reported over 13 people might have taken their own lives because of the pressure and false accusations.
And Alan Bates, the campaigner who led the fight for so long, he's finally getting his payout. I remember he turned down earlier offers.
He did, and rightly so. He called offers back in January and May 2024 cruel and derisory, said they were less than half his actual claim, which, crucially, included compensation for the 20 years he spent campaigning.
20 years just to get a fair hearing. Wow.
It tells you everything about the burden placed on victims when systems fail so badly. But overall, the redress is significant now.
What are the total figures?
As of September 2025, it's $1.23 billion awarded across the different compensation schemes, going to over 9,100 sub-postmasters. And, importantly, there's been a policy change.
Oh.
Victims claiming compensation now get free legal advice. That directly addresses a huge complaint before that people felt forced into accepting lowball offers because they couldn't afford lawyers.
That seems like a crucial step. Okay, let's shift now from that kind of domestic institutional failure to the international stage. Sudan, and the role of geopolitical interference, particularly from the UAE. They made quite an admission recently.
They did, yeah. Anwar Gargash, he's a senior diplomatic envoy for the UAE. He publicly admitted the UAE and others all made a mistake by not imposing sanctions on those behind the 2021 coup in Sudan. Said they should have put their foot down collectively.
Which is interesting, given the ongoing accusations which they deny that the UAE has been covertly arming the RSF, the Rapid Support Forces fighting the army.
Exactly. The denial continues. But beyond the alleged military aid, what are the UAE's core interests in Sudan? It really boils down to two things: resources and politics.
Okay, resources first.
Resources are huge. The UAE imports something like 80% of its food, so securing access to Sudan's farmland, livestock, minerals. It's framed as an existential concern for them.
Yeah.
And the big prize is gold.
Right, the gold smuggling figures are pretty wild.
They really are. Officially, almost 97% of gold exported from army-controlled areas goes to the UAE. But that's just the official stuff. Estimates suggest maybe 90% of Sudan's total gold production, worth around $13.4 billion, gets smuggled out illicitly, often finding its way to the UAE eventually.
And the second driver, politics.
Politics, yeah. Specifically, pushing back against Islamism, particularly the influence of the Muslim Brotherhood. The UAE sees that as a major regional security threat.
So, given those strategic interests, resources, and ideology, how genuine is this recent admission of a mistake? Are they really changing course towards supporting the civilian government?
Well, they're certainly saying the right things now, condemning atrocities, calling for a transition back to civilian rule. That's partly diplomatic necessity, especially with U.S. pressure.
But historically?
Historically, their public statements often blamed the Sudanese army for being uncompromising, which, conveniently didn't interfere too much with their other interests. The hope now, particularly from the U.S., is that the UAE and Egypt, which tends to back the Sudanese army, can actually be pressured to push their respective proxies towards a ceasefire.
A complex web of interests. Okay, that theme of geopolitics, hard borders, resource flows, leads us to a very different, stark example: the Tibetan exile community.
Yeah, it's a really sharp contrast. It shows the impact of state control tightening. Since China massively reinforced its borders after the 2008 Beijing Olympics and the uprising around then, patrols have become much, much heavier.
And the effect on people trying to leave.
Dramatic. Where before you might have seen, at least a couple of hundred people managing to cross into exile each year, that number is now reportedly down into the single digits.
Single digits. Wow. Just reflects that intense security clampdown.
Exactly. Limiting the flow of people and information.
Okay, let's pivot now. From state power to citizen power. Activism as a counterforce. We're heading to the Balkans, where locals are fighting a very modern resource battle.
Yeah, the fight over lithium white gold. You've got Serbian communities in the Jadar Valley and Bosnian communities on Mount Majevica basically joining forces. It's this fascinating transnational resistance against huge foreign mining companies.
And the reason they're united is because the environmental threat doesn't respect borders, right?
Precisely. Lithium extraction uses nasty chemicals like sulfuric acid. There's a high risk of contaminating soil, groundwater, rivers. Serbian scientists warned back in 2021 that these toxins could easily flow across the border, impacting both countries.
And the Serbian activists, groups like We Won't Give Up Jadar, they had some success.
They did. Quite remarkable success, actually. Using classic grassroots tactics, street protests, legal challenges, physically monitoring the land. They managed to force a temporary halt to the big Rio Tinto project there. It even led to this global pledge, the Jadar Declaration, in 2022, a real win for community organizing.
And in Bosnia, these alliances, like the Guardians of Majevica,
Yeah.
they've managed to bridge ethnic divides.
That's another striking aspect. You have Serbs, Croats, Muslim Bosniaks groups, often historically divided, coming together purely focused on protecting their shared environment from the mining threat.
But they face different hurdles.
They do, particularly in the Bosnian Serb entity, Republika Srpska. A 2022 law there essentially stripped local communities of their authority over geological exploration permits. That makes their legal fight much harder, taking power away from the people most affected.
Okay, speaking of legal hurdles and government action,
Yeah.
let's jump to Germany. There's political tension there around migration, specifically a push for more repatriations.
Yes, the ruling coalition, the CDU-CSU and SPD, they've stated a goal to significantly increase repatriations. But even within the government, there's debate about how feasible it is.
How so?
Well, you have Chancellor Friedrich Merz saying the civil war in Syria is basically over, so repatriations can start. But then you have others, even from his own CDU party, like Foreign Minister Johann Wadephul, being much more cautious, saying it's only possible to a very limited extent right now.
And practically, is deportation actually easy to carry out?
Not at all. It's legally incredibly complex. You're dealing with at least 4 layers of law: German national residency law, constitutional law, EU directives, and international law. Trying to align all of those for mass deportations is a real challenge.
Are there logistical problems too? Bottlenecks?
Big ones. Lack of infrastructure is a key issue. For instance, nationwide, Germany only has about 800 spaces in detention facilities for people awaiting deportation. But in 2024, there were around 6,000 people legally required to leave. They just don't have the physical capacity.
So the government prefers people to leave voluntarily if possible.
Absolutely. Deportation is seen as the last resort. The head of Berlin's immigration authority pointed out that in 2019, the ratio was stark. About 6,000 voluntary returns compared to only 1,000 deportations. So the focus for the coalition is also on strengthening counseling and incentives for voluntary departure. It's seen as more effective and, frankly, more humane.
Right. Okay, before we wrap this all up, just one quick sobering note from India.
Yes, just a brief mention of a recent tragedy. A passenger train crashed into a cargo train near Bilaspur in central India. Sadly, at least 5 people were killed, several injured. It's a reminder that, unfortunately, train collisions aren't that uncommon there, often linked to aging infrastructure and sometimes human error in the system.
A grim reminder of infrastructure challenges.
Okay.
Okay, let's try and pull these diverse threads together. We've gone from Japanese gender policy to UK tax debates, Sudanese resource conflicts to Balkan environmental activism. What's the big picture here?
I think the main takeaway is how deeply interconnected everything is now. You can't really look at a national issue like that Japanese naming law impacting scientists or the UK's Budget Balancing Act in isolation anymore. They're all tangled up in global dynamics.
Yeah, like the UAE's hunt for food and mineral security in Sudan directly impacts regional stability.
Exactly. Or how the environmental risks of lithium mining can instantly forge alliances across ethnic and national lines in the Balkans because pollution doesn't care about borders.
And the other thing that really stands out is the power of citizen action when institutions seem to fail. Alan Bates fighting the post office for 20 years.
Right. Or the Serbs and Bosnians putting aside history to challenge mining giants. It shows that people can mobilize and hold powerful, often opaque systems accountable, even when it takes enormous effort.
Which brings us to a final thought, really, for you listening. We've seen these examples, like the anti-lithium movement, where transnational cross-community action has had real documented success.
So the question to ponder is, what does that kind of success tell us about the future? When established institutions, whether it's a national post office or a transitional government like in Sudan, prove unable or unwilling to actually protect their people or manage resources responsibly, what does the power of these grassroots, cross-border movements imply about where effective change might come from next?
When institutions falter, perhaps the people really do step into the gap. Something to definitely think about. Thank you for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time.